Let's begin with opening prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us to the beginning of this new week and to this YPG meeting. Please give us a greater understanding of your word and of what's going on in the world as we speak. Thank you for always being with us. Please give us your Holy Spirit. Thank you for calling us to be part of the 144,000, and please continue to prepare us for that job. Please always be with us, and especially during this meeting. In Christ's name, amen.
Welcome everybody to Youth Prophecy Group meeting 115. Today is December 4th, 2022.
The title of today's lesson is The Republicans and the Midterm.
The Sunday law will be an issue over gender equality. We know that it will be pushed by conservatives, and in the United States, conservatives are the Republican Party. Ellen G. White tells us that the Sunday law will come from the legislative and judicial powers in the United States government, which means that both of these branches of government need to be controlled by Republicans. Conservatives already control the majority of the Supreme Court, which is the head of the judicial branch, and that majority will not be taken away anytime soon since Supreme Court justices serve for life. So, but even though we know the Sunday law will be more than one event, the judicial branch only interprets laws. You need the other branches to make laws. Conservatives need to control more than just the judicial branch to pass a Sunday law or the Sunday or to accomplish the Sunday law waymark. To possess the power to pass a Sunday law, there are two options that Republicans have. First, they can control the legislature and the executive branches with a majority and the presidency, respectively. Or secondly, they can have what is called a supermajority in the legislative branch. With either of these two options, Republicans will be able to pass whatever laws they want, and they will have full control of the legislative branch, and we already know they have full control of the judicial branch. That's what we're going to look at in today's lesson.
How to pass laws. In order to become law, bills approved by both houses and the president. We just saw that in order for today's right wing to pass laws that will make up the Sunday law, they need a certain amount of control. The conventional way to get a law passed is with a simple majority in Congress. The United States Congress is the legislative branch of government. It passes, or it makes and passes laws. The House of Representatives is the first half, and the Senate is the second half of the legislative branch. For a proposed law, which is called a bill, to become law, it first is introduced in either the House or the Senate. Next, the House or Senate, depending on where the bill was first proposed, sends the bill to a committee to be worked on. If the committee approves the bill, it's sent back to be debated. The House or Senate then debate to modify the bill, and when at least a majority of people are happy with the modified bill, they have to vote on it. So once debating is over, there is a vote to pass or block the bill. If the bill is being voted on in the Senate, it needs 51 votes to pass. This is because there are 100 total members in the Senate, and since it just needs a simple majority, which is just one more than half, it needs 51 votes. The House also needs a simple majority to pass, but since the House has 435 total representatives, the bill needs 218 supporting votes. So that would also be a simple majority of one more than half. Well, since the House isn't an even number, it's technically one more than half. Yeah, one more than half either way. So after either the House or Senate votes on the bill, depending on where it originated, if the bill is passed, it's sent to the other house to be voted on, the other side of the legislative branch. If the bill is unsuccessful in this second vote, it won't become law. But if the bill is passed in the second half of the legislative Then there is one final step the bill needs to pass before it becomes law. That final step is to be sent to the president and signed into law. Normally, the president will sign the bill. However, if the president disagrees with the bill, they can veto it. A veto prevents the bill from becoming a law. And this is why if Republicans want to control the laws passed, control Congress and pass laws that will bring about the Sunday law, they need control of three things. First, control of the House with a simple majority of 218 votes, or or more, of course, but they need at least 218 votes. Second, they need control of the Senate with at least 51 votes, which is a simple majority. And thirdly, they need control of the presidency. So they need a Republican president there to pass and sign their laws. So without these three, there is only one other option for a law to be passed, and we're going to look at that option next. And in this picture, we have the Senate chamber where they vote on the bills and then send them to the House, unless the House sent them the bill first.
A supermajority is when there are two-thirds of the power being held by one group of people. In the House of Representatives, it would be either the Democratic or Republican Party holding 290 of the 435 seats. In the Senate, it would be either the Republican or Democratic Party holding 67 of the 100 seats. As it was seen in the previous paragraph, to pass a bill, Congress only needs support of a simple majority or 51% and the support of the president. But say the president vetoes a bill that the majority of Congress wants passed. This is where the supermajority comes in. Congress can use the power of the supermajority to overrule the veto. And they do it because if a president vetoes a bill, then he sends it back, or he or she sends it back to Congress. And Congress can then re-vote on the bill with a supermajority, and it doesn't have to go back to the president. It just becomes law. This is why the supermajority is very powerful and very rare. With just a simple majority, the party in favor of the bill would have to convince the president to sign it into law, which would be difficult if the party and the president aren't in the same political party. But if the party in favor of the bill has a supermajority in both houses, then whether or not the president supports the bill doesn't matter as much because they can pass the bill anyways with two-thirds of the vote.
Having a supermajority in both houses has happened only a few times in the United States history, specifically 7 times between the Democrat and Republican parties. The Republican Party had a supermajority in both the Senate and the House during the 39th, 40th, 41st, and 43rd Congresses, which was the years 1865 to 71 and then 1873 to 75. This was during the time following the Civil War in the United States. At the beginning of the 39th Congress, Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, was president, but after he was assassinated, Andrew Johnson, a Democrat, took over. So half of the 39th Congress is under a Democrat, and the 40th Congress is also under a Democrat, while the actual members, the actual supermajority in Congress were Republicans. The next time there was a supermajority in both houses of Congress, the Democrats had the majority. This took place in the 74th and 75th Congresses, which was from 1935 to 1939. This was the Congress under Democratic President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who is in the middle in the picture. Well, on the left, but in the middle of the screen. Roosevelt, and this took place during part of his first term and part of his second term. Roosevelt was the president that led the United States through much of the Great Depression and through nearly all of World War II. The last time one party had a supermajority in both houses of Congress was 1965 to 1967, the 89th Congress. This was under Democratic President Lyndon Johnson right after he had signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And he's on the right. This Democrat supermajority took place during the Civil Rights Movement. If we look at the lines, we notice something about supermajorities. YPG Lesson 102, which was titled Leaving the Right Behind, we explained how the political parties didn't used to be on the political spectrum that they are, well, didn't used to be, yes, on the political spectrum that they are today. If we take this into account, the modern Democratic Party is a party that has won every supermajority. In the 1800s, the Republican Party stood for what the Democrat Party stands for today. So the supermajorities that the Republican Party won during the time after the Civil War were actually wins for the left wing. During the time of Roosevelt and Johnson, the parties were switching sides. You can see in what they stood for, Lyndon and Johnson, that they represented modern Democrats, not the Democrats of the 19th century or the time of Lincoln. So all 7 supermajorities in both houses of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives, were won by liberals or the Democrats of today. This fact makes it harder for the Republican Party because this is one of the only ways they will be able to pass a Sunday law, and they haven't been able to do it in past history.
The election cycle. House members serve 2-year terms. The United States Congress elects new representatives every year or every 2 years. As we know, Congress is made of the House and the Senate. Every 2 years, seats in the House and the Senate are open to be filled with new or incumbent Congress members in what we call midterm elections. Since they serve 2-year-long terms, all 435 members of the House of Representatives are up for re-election or to be replaced in these midterm elections. However, senators serve 6-year-long terms, so every 2 years, only 1/3 of all the senators are up to be re-elected or replaced in the midterms. This is so every 2 years you can have some senators up for election instead of senators up for election every 6 years. So it's like, as you can see in the picture, it's staggered. So we have every 2 years, we have all 435 of the House members, but every 2 years, you only have 1/3 of the senators. That way, there's always some senators being elected every 2 years in the midterms. In 40 of the 50 United States, for a candidate to be elected to either the House of Representatives or the Senate, they have to win most of all the votes. They have to win the most votes of all the candidates. This means that they don't technically have to win a majority of the votes, they just have to win the most votes. For example, one candidate could win 33% of all the votes, another 21%, another could win 15%, and another could win 31%. Even though nobody won a majority, which would be 51% or more, the winner is the candidate with 33% of the votes, since that was the most votes of all the candidates. However, only 40 of the 50 states work like that. 10 states, which are Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Texas, and Vermont. So those 10 states require a candidate to win at least 50% of all the votes in order to take office. If neither candidate wins 50% in the midterms, a special runoff election is held for that candidate to have a second chance, or for those two candidates to have a second chance at getting 50%. And the winner of that runoff election is the person who will take office in the House of Representatives or the Senate.
In the midterm elections, the president's party, whether it is Democratic or Republican, loses control of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Quoting from Reuters. In the United States, midterm congressional elections take place every 2 years, dividing each president's 4-year term, and are often thought of as a referendum on the current administration's performance. If that is the case, then voters over the past 80 years have not generally been impressed with their elected presidents. As results of past midterm elections show, the party in power almost always loses seats in either the House of Representatives, usually both. End quote. During Donald Trump's single term in office, the Republicans lost 40 seats in the House. In Barack Obama's first term in office, the Democrat Party lost 63 seats in the House. In Clinton's first term in office, the Democrats lost 52 seats in the House. In Ronald Reagan's first term in office, the Republican Party lost 26 seats in the House. It is a trend for the presidents to lose dozens of seats in Congress during the midterms.
The 2022 midterm elections did not go as planned for either party. Democrats won more than was expected, and Republicans lost more. The issues of election fraud and abortion, but especially abortion, allowed the Democrats to do better than expected. Democrats and their allies spent almost $500 million on advertisements where abortion was spoken about, 8 times more than Republicans and much more than any other subject in their ad campaign. They used the fear and anger from the overturning of Roe v. Wade to succeed as much as they did in the midterms. In the Senate, there were 35 seats up for election, 9 of which were competitive. The Democrats won 4 of the Senate seats, including 5 out of the 9 competitive ones, and the Republicans won 20 of the open seats. One of the competitive Senate seats is still it's not decided yet because it's in Georgia and they're having a runoff on December 6th. Democrats currently have 50 seats in the Senate and the Republicans have 49. So no matter who wins the Georgia seats, whether the incumbent Democrat or the Republican, Democrats will still control the Senate. In the House of Representatives, there are a total of 435 seats that were up for election because they're all up for election every 2 years, like we saw. Of that, a party needs, 64 of those seats were considered competitive. The Democrats lost 9 seats and the Republicans gained nine seats. A party needs 218 seats for the majority, and Republicans have 220, Democrats have 213. There are still 2 House races that haven't been decided, but they're both leaning Republican. One is in California and the other one is in Colorado. This means that Republicans control the House of Representatives, although it is a very small margin, and they are very disappointed in themselves. This midterm means that the next 2 years, there will be a Democratic president, a narrowly Democratic Senate, and a narrowly Republican House of Representatives. As you can see, the Senate is at the top, also called the upper house. It's blue because it's Democratic, and the House of Representatives is at the bottom. It's red, also called the lower house.
Trump candidates. Trump's endorsed candidates didn't perform well in the midterm elections. Prior to the elections, Trump began endorsing hundreds of candidates. Most Trump endorsed candidates won, but when we look closely, we see it wasn't actually a win for Trump. While most of his endorsed candidates won, the vast majority of those candidates were in non-competitive races, many of them incumbents, meaning they would have won just as easily without Trump's endorsements. So they were going to win no matter if Trump had said, yeah, you should vote for them or not. They weren't in competitive races. So in order to see how Trump's endorsements truly affected the elections, we have to look at the competitive races where the winner was unclear previous to voting. It's in these elections where any endorsements will significantly affect the candidate's ability to get votes. So there were 82 of these competitive elections in the midterms. And before we look at how Trump's candidates performed, first we need to learn what offices these elections were for. The midterm elections are specifically for Congress, the House, and the Senate, but states often hold their own elections for governor and other state officials as well on that day. So of the 82 competitive seats or competitive races, there were 64 for the House, 9 for the Senate, 9 for governor of 9 different states, and that makes up 82. There were more competitive races for smaller smaller offices, like Secretary of State and things like that, but we're focusing on Congress and the governorship. So of the 64 competitive seats for the House of Representatives, 23 of those seats were won by Republicans and 41 were won by Democrats. 6 of those 23 Republican seats were won by Trump-endorsed candidates. So only 6 of the competitive seats were won by Trump-endorsed candidates. That's 6 out of 64. Of the 9 competitive seats for Senate, 3 Trump candidates won and 5 lost to Democrats. 1 seat, as we learned earlier, is in a runoff election in the next few days. And lastly, of the 9 seats for governor, none of the Trump candidates won and 8 Democrats took those seats. The one Republican that did win that seat wasn't a Trump-backed candidate. They were actually opposed to Trump, I think. So this Republican loss could have been avoided if Trump had not endorsed certain candidates. Republicans expected to bring a red wave over the country, but this failed. And for Trump, instead of endorsing reliable Republicans, he chose to endorse far-right election deniers and new politicians. According to NBC News, 28% of voters that voted in the midterms said they were voting to oppose Trump. That's nearly a third of all the voters turned out just to vote against the influence of a president who was no longer in office. So overall, Republicans did have success in the elections. As we saw, they took the House of Representatives. But because of that success was not the rate of hope for. And it wasn't all because of Trump. There were some other factors to look at in a second. But Trump played a part in not bringing that red wave in his endorsements. So this doesn't mean the United States is trending in the right direction and that Republicans will eventually lose all their power. But what it does mean is that the Republicans, we know they are going to eventually gain more power and take the country, but Trump might not be the head of the GOP when that happens.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure you said of the 64 competitive seats for the House, 23 of the Republican candidates won and 41 lost to Democrats. It's 41 Democrats lost. You said of the 64 competitive seats for the House, 21 of the Republican candidates won and 41 lost to the Democrats. It's not possible.
I mean, it's not possible.
You can't, of the 64, you can't have 23 Republican candidates win. Oh, wait. And 41 lost. That is possible. Never mind. I didn't think. The Republican Party failed in their predictions that there was going to be a red wave, meaning they would take a majority of the seats in both houses. Quoting from Politico, Republicans on Tuesday morning alluded to the midterms becoming a referendum on Democrats and Biden's presidency. They pointed to issues they said were high on voters' minds, such as soaring inflation, as a sign of a red wave sweeping the country and giving Republicans back the majority. Arizona GOP Senate candidate Blake Masters said he expected a big and glorious wave of Republican wins on Tuesday. In quote, Masters did not win his race. Not only did they not take control of the Senate, but they barely took control of the House of Representatives. To say that their performance was underwhelming is an understatement. Luckily for them, but not for the rest of us, the midterms happen every 2 years. That means that they will have another chance at their red wave in 2024. On top of the Republicans doing poorly in the midterms, many of the candidates endorsed by Trump didn't win their elections, which could have repercussions on how the Republican Party will view his section of the party come the elections in 2024. If the Republican Party has a red wave in 2024, they will have the control that they need to bring about Sunday law. So they didn't get it this time, but they might get it in 2 years.
In summary, so we started off looking at what you need in order to pass a law in the United States. You need either to control the presidency, the Senate, and the House. and you would need just a simple majority in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. Or you could have a supermajority in the Senate and House of Representatives, and that way it doesn't matter what the president does. If he vetoes the bill, the Senate or the House would just revote on it with the supermajority, and it would become a law anyway. So then we looked at the supermajorities of the past. There were 7 that happened in the 39th, the 40th, the 41st, the 43rd, the 74th, the 75th, and 89th Congresses. And we saw that the first 4 were Republican and the last 3 were Democrat. But because of the parties, Democrat and Republican parties switching their ideologies, the Republican Party of the 1800s is actually symbolizes the Democratic Party of today, and the Democratic Party in under Roosevelt and Johnson also symbolizes also symbolizes the Democratic Party of today. And we looked at that in YPG lesson 102. So the point being that all the supermajorities of the past actually went to the right party, so the Republicans don't have much of a chance of getting a supermajority today. The elections in the United States follow a pattern. Every 4 years is a presidential election. They have a 4-year term. Every 2 years, 1/3 of the senators are up for election, and they serve 6-year terms. And also, every 2 years, every representative is up for election because they serve 2-year terms. So this means that every 2 years there is either a midterm election or a general election in the United States, and enough seats are always up for re-election that the control of both the Senate and the House of Representatives can change. And historically, we saw that in the midterms, the president's party loses very badly. So the outcome of the 2022 midterms was the split Congress. The Democrats control the Senate with 50 votes, just like last time. It's possible that they even get 51, which is more than they got when Biden was elected president. And the House of Representatives is narrowly controlled by Republicans. And like we said, there's 2. Well, they're most likely going to get the 2 extra seats that haven't been called already, and it will still be rather a narrow lead, but they will still have a small majority. Not a super majority, but still a majority. We also saw that abortion was the main reason why Democrats won as much as they did in this election. We saw how Democrats spent nearly $500 million on ads talking about abortion, really using the overturning of Roe v. Wade to propel them during this midterm election. And Trump also didn't help the Republican Party at all. A lot of his candidates did worse than was expected. So Republicans didn't get a supermajority in the House, and they did not get a red wave. This means that they'll have to wait until 2024 to try to take the president as well as the legislative and judicial branches, or to try to get a supermajority in just the legislative branch, so that's very unlikely. So either way, the Republican Party does not control the legislative branch as much as they need to right now. But like you said, midterms every 2 years, so we really don't know. And we know that according to Ellen White, the Sunday Law is legislative and judicial authorities, and Republicans already have the judicial branches, the judicial branch, and all they need now is the legislative branch, which they can get in 2 years.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about this lesson, or just the message in general before the quiz? If not, then
Question number 1. What is control of 2/3 of both the House of Representatives and the Senate called? So what is control of 2/3 of the House and the Senate called? We have the C, another C, and that's correct. When one party has control, one political party has control of 2/3 of the House, and this is called a supermajority. And then they don't need the president's approval to pass a law. If the president vetoes the law, they can just pass it anyway. Question number 2. How many supermajorities were controlled by the right wing in history? We have an A, another A. So how many supermajorities have been controlled by the right wing? We have 2 A's and another A. And that's correct. Even though they have been controlled by Republicans 4 times, the ideology of the Republicans at the time was actually aligned with the Democrats of today. So that means that even though it was Republican by name, it was Democrat in ideology. So technically, the Democrats have controlled all 7 of the supermajorities in history, which means it's unlikely for a Republican of today to get control of a supermajority, even though it's technically possible, but it's unlikely. Question number 3. How do midterms usually turn out? So we looked at how there are midterms every year, which is halfway during a president's presidency. And how does that usually turn out for the president? We have 2 G's. Oh, we have 3 G's. And G is correct. Historically, the president's party usually loses power in Congress during the midterms. Question number 4. What is one reason why the Republicans didn't bring the red wave they expected during these 2022 midterms? We have a B, 2 B's. So we know the Republicans thought they were going to win all these seats and take the House, take the Senate, and all of that. Of course, they didn't. And what is one reason Democrats spent a whole bunch of money pushing to avoid the Republicans from getting this red wave? And we have another B. And that's correct. The Democrats brought up the issue of abortion as many times as they could to convince the people that the Republicans are not a good choice for Congress or Senate. Well, Senate is part of Congress, but for Congress, because the Republicans just made abortion illegal if the states want to make it illegal. And it worked. So the Republicans didn't bring a red wave because of the issue of abortion. And last question. Since Republicans didn't gain control they needed in order to pass Sunday laws, what can the Republicans do now? We have an F. So obviously we know it's not a literal Sunday law and not a literal Sunday law passed in Congress, but it's this other laws that relate to inequality that amount to what we call the Sunday law. And since they don't have the power in Congress to pass those little laws here and there, what can they do now? We have 2 F's and another F. And that's correct. Since they didn't take control of both houses in Congress, in 2024, they have another attempt to take both houses in Congress, and there's a presidential election. So they have an attempt to take control of the presidency. So congratulations, perfect score for participating and answering the questions correctly.
So thank you everybody for coming. If you would like to be on the mailing list, if you have questions, if you want updates or recordings from the meetings, you can contact us at youthprophecygroup@gmail.com. If you would like previous notes or previous recordings, you can find them on the YPG website at youthprophecygroup.com, and the videos are on the YPG YouTube channel. The next meeting will be next year on the January 1st of 2023. So now let's close with prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us to this meeting. Thank you for being with us, and please continue to be with us and give us all the Holy Spirit. Thank you for letting us understand how the midterms are prophetic and how we should understand them so that we can know when, or a closer time to when the Sunday law will be. Thank you for continually being with us and be with all the priests, Levites, and the Nethinims. We love you. Thank you for first loving us. Amen. Thank you all for
Bye.
coming. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.